The city streets were quiet that night. A soft drizzle fell from the sky, leaving the roads shiny under the yellow streetlights. Officer Daniels sat inside his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the empty lane ahead. His shift had been boring so far, and boredom always made him restless. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel and looked at the time. It was past 9. Families were home, restaurants were closing, and the only cars left on the road belonged either to night shift workers or people returning from a long day. Daniels didn't enjoy quiet nights, he preferred the rush, the action, the moments when his authority felt powerful. Just as he leaned back in his seat, headlights appeared in the distance. A black luxury sedan glided down the street, smooth and steady. Daniels straightened up, his eyes narrowing. In his mind, a question rose instantly: who is driving a car like that in this neighborhood? He didn't see a broken light, a wrong turn, or any traffic mistake. But suspicion alone pushed him to put down the coffee, start the engine, and follow. The sedan moved gracefully, keeping to the speed limit, stopping at signs. There was nothing unusual. Yet, the more Daniels watched, the more uneasy he became. He convinced himself that the driver had to be hiding something. Maybe stolen car? Maybe drugs? The thoughts ran wild in his mind, fueled by his own doubts. Finally, with a quick decision, Daniels flipped on his patrol lights. The red and blue beams danced across the wet road as the siren gave a short, sharp cry. The sedan slowed and pulled neatly to the side. Daniels stepped out of his car with a firm posture, fixing his hat and adjusting his belt. He wanted to look as strong and commanding as possible. The drizzle wet his shoulders, but he didn't care. He was already planning how the stop would go. He would ask questions, demand documents, and if the driver slipped even once, he would take action. The window of the sedan rolled down slowly. Inside sat a middle-aged black man, calm and well-dressed. His suit jacket was neat, his tie perfectly knotted, and his face carried a quiet confidence. He looked up at Daniels with steady eyes. "Good evening, officer," the man said politely. Daniels, however, didn't return the greeting. His tone was sharp, almost accusing. "License and registration." "Now." The man nodded, reaching calmly into his glove compartment. His movements were slow, deliberate, showing no sign of panic. He handed over the documents without a word. Daniel snatched them quickly, glancing over them without real focus. He wasn't searching for details, he was searching for an excuse. "What's your business here?" Daniels asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. "I'm heading home," the man replied evenly. His voice carried patience, not irritation, but there was strength beneath the calmness. Daniels frowned. "This is an expensive car." "Yours?" "Yes," the man said simply. The short answer annoyed Daniels. He wanted the man to stumble, to appear nervous, to give him a reason to dig deeper. But the driver stayed composed, almost too composed. That composure felt like a challenge to Daniels, a silent reminder that authority didn't always win. The officer circled the car, shining his flashlight over the polished paint, the clean tires, the spotless windows. Everything looked perfect, but Daniel's mind kept searching for flaws. He returned to the window, leaning in slightly. "Where are you coming from?" he pressed. "From work," the man said. His hands rested calmly on the steering wheel, fingers relaxed. Daniel studied him. Something about the man unsettled him. It wasn't just his confidence, it was the way he didn't show fear. Most people, when pulled over, shifted nervously or explained themselves too quickly. This man didn't. He spoke with ease, as though the stop was an inconvenience, not a threat. The silence stretched between them. The drizzle tapped on the car roof like a soft drum beat. Daniels cleared his throat, trying to regain the upper hand. "You know, people don't usually drive cars like this around here," he said with a half smile that wasn't friendly. The man raised his eyebrows slightly. Is that against the law, officer? The question was simple, but it cut deeper than Daniels expected. He tightened his jaw and avoided answering directly. Instead, he flipped through the documents again, though he had already seen they were valid. Behind the calm face of the driver, there was something else. His eyes seemed to study Daniels, not with fear, but with knowledge. It was as if he could see through the uniform, through the act of authority, straight into the heart of the man standing outside his car. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, he felt that maybe he wasn't in full control of the stop. But he couldn't admit that, not to himself, and certainly not to the man sitting silently before him. So, he hardened his tone again. Wait here, he said, stepping back. He walked toward his patrol car, though he had no real reason to run the documents again. He just needed time to think. Inside the patrol car, Daniel stared at the papers. Everything was in order: license clean, registration valid, insurance current. The man had done nothing wrong. Yet Daniel's pride wouldn't let him end the stop so quickly. He wanted to show power, to prove control. Out of the corner of his eye, he looked at the sedan again. The man was still sitting patiently, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. No sign of anger. No sign of weakness. Just calm, quiet strength. And deep down, though he would never admit it, Officer Daniels felt a flicker of unease. The stop had begun, but he had no idea how much it would change his life. Officer Daniels sat in his patrol car, staring at the driver's documents for the third time. Everything was valid: license, registration, insurance. Not a single error. Yet his pride refused to let the stop end here. He had already set the tone with his harsh approach, and admitting the man had done nothing wrong would feel like losing control. The drizzle outside had slowed, leaving a mist over the road. Cars passed by occasionally, their headlights sweeping across the two vehicles parked at the side. Each time one passed, Daniels felt more exposed. He wanted to wrap up the stop with authority, but something about the driver's calm presence unsettled him. Finally, Daniels stepped out of his car again. He adjusted his belt, squared his shoulders, and walked back to the sleek sedan. The driver, Mr. Harris, hadn't moved an inch. His hands still rested on the steering wheel, and his expression was steady, almost patient. Daniels leaned down toward the open window. "Step out of the car," he said firmly. Harris looked at him, his eyes calm but questioning. "Is there a reason for that, officer?" Daniels frowned. "I'm asking you to step out. That should be enough." There was a pause. The street was quiet except for the sound of rainwater dripping from tree branches. Finally, Harris sighed softly and unbuckled his seat belt. He opened the door and stepped out, moving with deliberate calmness. He wasn't resisting, but neither was he rushing to please the officer. His composure made Daniels feel as if he were the one being tested. Harris stood tall beside the car. His suit was sharp, his shoes polished despite the wet ground. He looked like a man of discipline and authority, not someone who had anything to hide. That fact irritated Daniels even more. "Where are you coming from again?" Daniels pressed. "From work," Harris repeated, his tone polite but firm. "And what work is that?" Daniels asked, trying to sound casual but lacing his words with suspicion. "I work in public service," Harris replied, his eyes steady. He didn't add details, and the shortness of his answer made Daniels feel as though the control of the conversation kept slipping from his hands. Daniels circled the man, eyeing him from head to toe. "You seem pretty calm for someone getting pulled over." Harris turned slightly to face him. "Why wouldn't I be calm, officer? I've done nothing wrong." The words landed heavily. Daniels shifted, trying to cover the unease rising inside him. He wasn't used to people meeting his authority with such confidence. Most drivers showed nervousness, gave long explanations, or rushed to prove innocence. Harris, however, acted as though he owed no justification beyond the truth. A couple walking on the sidewalk glanced at the scene as they passed. Daniels noticed them staring and felt a flush of heat rise to his face. He hated being watched, especially when he didn't feel in control. "Stand right here," Daniels ordered, pointing toward the front of the car. Harris obeyed, but his steady gaze remained fixed on the officer. Daniels opened the sedan's door and peered inside. The interior was spotless, no clutter, no smell, nothing out of place. It was the kind of car that spoke of discipline, not recklessness. Yet Daniels kept searching, running his flashlight over the seats, the dashboard, the console. He wanted something, anything that could justify his suspicion. But he found nothing. When he straightened back up, Harris was still watching him, silent and composed. That silence was powerful. It wasn't the silence of fear, it was the silence of someone waiting for the truth to show itself. Daniels broke it with another question. "What do you do in public service?" Harris tilted his head slightly. "That's a broad question, officer. Why don't you tell me what this stop is about first?" The words struck Daniels like a challenge. He clenched his jaw. "I'm the one asking questions here." For the first time, Harris's calm tone sharpened. "And I'm the one being stopped without cause." The air grew heavy between them. Daniels felt his heartbeat quicken. He didn't like the direction this was going. Harris's voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight and authority that didn't come from volume but from certainty. Daniels stepped closer, trying to reassert control. "Listen, you're acting suspicious. The car, the attitude, the way you answer questions, it all adds up." Harris's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't raise his voice. "The only thing suspicious here, officer, is why you pulled me over in the first place." Daniels felt a sting of anger. He wanted to shout, to threaten, to show that he was in charge. But something in Harris's gaze stopped him. There was no fear in those eyes, no weakness. Instead, there was a quiet strength that made Daniels feel exposed. The sound of another car passing filled the silence for a moment. Harris then spoke again, calmly but firmly. "You should be careful with the way you're handling this stop. Words and actions have consequences, especially for a man in your position." Daniels blinked. The sentence felt heavier than a simple warning. There was meaning behind those words, meaning he couldn't quite grasp yet. "Is that a threat?" Daniels asked quickly, trying to regain ground. "No," Harris replied smoothly. "It's advice." Daniels didn't respond. For the first time that night, he felt the smallest flicker of doubt. Something about this man didn't fit the image of an ordinary driver. The way he spoke, the confidence in his tone, the patience in his eyes, it all hinted at something more. But Daniels pushed the thought aside. He wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. He straightened his posture and tightened his grip on his flashlight. "Stay right here," he said, his voice louder than before. "This isn't over." Harris gave a small nod, calm as ever. "I know," he said softly. And though Daniels didn't understand it at that moment, those two words carried a weight he would soon feel more than he ever imagined. The night air grew colder as Officer Daniels stood near the sedan, pretending to check details on his notepad. In truth, he was stalling. Everything he had seen so far was clean, no broken law, no suspicious items, nothing wrong at all. Yet ending the stop now felt impossible. He had already pushed too far. If he simply let the man go, it would look like defeat. Daniels walked back toward Harris, who still stood calmly near the front of his car. The drizzle had stopped, leaving drops of water clinging to his suit jacket. He didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't show the smallest sign of nervousness. He just watched, steady and patient, as though waiting for the officer to reveal his next move. "You're being very quiet," Daniels said, trying to sound casual but sharp. "I speak when I need to," Harris replied calmly. His voice was even, controlled. Daniels narrowed his eyes. He didn't like answers like that. To him, silence meant defiance. He wanted people to talk, to stumble, to reveal weakness. Harris gave him none of that. Instead, the man's calmness pressed against him like an invisible wall. "Empty your pockets," Daniels ordered suddenly. Harris raised an eyebrow. "Is there a legal reason for that request, officer?" The question cut deep. Daniels felt his face tighten. "I said empty your pockets." For a moment, Harris didn't move. The silence stretched between them again, heavy with tension. Finally, with a slow and deliberate motion, Harris placed his hands in his pockets and pulled them inside out. Nothing, only a wallet and a set of keys. He held them out for Daniels to see, his eyes never leaving the officer's face. "Happy now?" Harris asked softly. Daniels ignored the tone and leaned closer. "Step back," he commanded. He then crouched slightly to shine his flashlight under the car. "Clean." He checked the back seat again, the trunk, even the tires. Nothing out of place. The more Daniels searched, the more his frustration grew. His authority felt like sand slipping through his fingers. He was playing a game where the other man refused to move, and somehow, that made Daniels feel like he was losing. Finally, Daniels stood upright again, his jaw tight. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said sharply. Harris tilted his head slightly. "I've cooperated with everything you asked, officer. Perhaps the real question is, what are you really looking for?" Daniels froze. The words struck him in a way he didn't expect. They were calm, not mocking, but they carried a truth he didn't want to face. He wasn't looking for anything specific. He was simply trying to assert power. And Harris knew it. Daniels cleared his throat, covering his unease. "Don't get smart with me." "I'm not being smart," Harris said gently. "I'm being honest." Another car passed slowly down the street, its driver turning his head to glance at the strange scene. Daniels felt heat creep up his neck. He hated the idea of onlookers questioning his actions. He turned back to Harris, his frustration bubbling over. "You think you can just stand there and lecture me?" Daniels snapped. Harris's expression didn't change. "I think I can remind you that respect works both ways." The words hung in the air, simple yet powerful. Daniels clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his badge pressing heavily on his chest. He wanted to shout, to demand obedience, to force Harris into submission. But something about the man's steady voice made that impossible. For the first time in a long while, Daniels felt small. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if trying to regain control through intimidation. "Listen carefully. I can make this night very difficult for you." Harris looked directly into his eyes. His tone remained calm, but now there was steel beneath it. "And you should listen carefully too, officer. You might not realize how difficult you're making this night for yourself." Daniels blinked. The words sank into him, heavier than he wanted to admit. There was something behind them, a certainty, a knowledge, almost a warning. But he couldn't back down now. His pride refused to let him. "You're testing my patience," Daniels muttered. "And you're testing your own limits," Harris replied smoothly. The silence returned, sharper this time. The sound of distant traffic, the drip of water from tree branches, even the hum of streetlights, all of it seemed louder in the absence of their voices. Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his authority slipping further with each passing second. He turned away abruptly, pretending to check the license again. His hands trembled slightly as he held the papers. He didn't understand why this man's calm presence rattled him so deeply. It wasn't just defiance, it was as though Harris knew something important, something Daniels couldn't see yet. When he turned back, Harris was still watching him, steady as ever. "You can keep pushing," Harris said quietly, "but remember this moment. It will matter more than you think." Daniels frowned, unsettled. "What's that supposed to mean?" Harris didn't answer. Instead, he simply folded his hands in front of him and stood tall, waiting. That waiting was worse than any insult, worse than any resistance. It was patience filled with quiet confidence, and it made Daniels feel like the ground beneath him was shifting. He stepped closer again, almost desperate now. "Don't play games with me. Tell me who you really are." Harris's lips curved into the faintest smile, not mocking, but knowing. "You'll find out soon enough." Daniels froze. His stomach tightened, and for a brief moment, fear flickered in his chest. He quickly forced it down, replacing it with anger. "This stop isn't over," Daniels said harshly, though his voice betrayed a trace of doubt. Harris gave a slow nod. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." The words carried a finality that left Daniels unsettled, though he tried to hide it. The power he thought he had was slipping away, and though he didn't yet understand why, a storm was building and it was aimed directly at him. The misty air grew colder as Officer Daniels stood rigid, his flashlight still in hand. The night around them was calm, but inside Daniels, there was no calm at all. His pride was bruised, his authority shaken. The man standing before him, Mr. Harris, hadn't resisted, hadn't raised his voice, yet somehow had taken control of the moment. Daniels hated that feeling. He was the one with the badge, the uniform, the power of the law. Yet every word Harris spoke, every steady glance he gave, made Daniels feel like he was the one being judged. Harris remained still, his hands folded in front of him, his expression calm but firm. There was no arrogance, no mockery. Just patience. But that patience felt heavy, as though it carried a hidden weight. Daniels cleared his throat and tried to sound confident. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Harris's reply was quiet, but it carried strength. "No, officer. I think you're making it harder for yourself." The words stung. Daniels felt his chest tighten. He wanted to snap back, to raise his voice, but something about the calm tone made anger feel like weakness. He forced himself to stand straighter, gripping his flashlight as if it gave him strength. "Be careful with your words," Daniels said sharply. Harris tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving the officer's. "And you should be careful with your choices." The sentence hung in the air like a soft bell, simple but impossible to ignore. Daniels shifted uneasily. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't loud. Yet it carried more force than shouting ever could. "Choices?" Daniels repeated, his voice uncertain. "Yes," Harris said, his tone steady. "Every action you take in this moment is shaping your future. One wrong step, and it could cost you more than you imagine." Daniels stiffened. He wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss it as nonsense, but the seriousness in Harris's eyes made it impossible. It felt less like a warning and more like a truth, one that Daniels didn't want to face. "I'm the one asking questions here," Daniels muttered. Harris gave the faintest nod. "Then ask yourself this: why did you stop me tonight? Was it truly for the law, or something else?" The question pierced deeper than Daniels expected. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He didn't have an honest answer. He knew it, and worse, Harris seemed to know it too. Daniels turned away for a moment, pretending to check his notepad, though there was nothing new to write. His hand shook slightly as he held the pen. Why was this man affecting him so much? Why couldn't he control this stop the way he controlled others? Behind him, Harris spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "You carry a badge, officer. That badge means trust. When you misuse it, you don't just fail the people you stop, you fail yourself. Daniels froze. His throat felt dry. No one had ever spoken to him like that during a stop. Drivers usually pleaded, argued, or shouted. But this man spoke like a teacher, like someone who knew the weight of authority better than Daniels himself. He spun around quickly, anger rising to cover his unease. "Don't lecture me." Harris didn't flinch. He simply looked at Daniels, his gaze steady. Sometimes the hardest lessons come when we don't want to hear them. The quiet strength in his voice made Daniels falter. He wanted to shout again, but his voice wouldn't rise. His anger, instead of growing, felt smaller under the weight of Harris's calmness. Daniels took a step closer, lowering his tone. "You think you know me?" Harris answered gently. "I don't need to know you. I only need to see how you act when you think no one is watching." Those words hit Daniels harder than he expected. His jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened, but inside, something stirred. A crack in his armor. For the first time, Daniels felt fear not of Harris as a man, but of what Harris's words might mean for him. It was as though Harris wasn't just talking about this moment but about his entire career, his entire way of thinking. Daniels tried to push the feeling away. He pointed at the car again. "Don't move. Stay right there." His voice was loud, but it sounded forced, even to his own ears. Harris simply nodded. "I'll stay. But remember, officer, you're the one being watched tonight, not me." Daniels blinked. His stomach tightened. Watched? By who? The thought made his palms sweat. He looked around quickly, scanning the street, the sidewalks, the windows of nearby houses. Nothing. Only silence, mist, and the steady presence of the man before him. He turned back, his nerves prickling. "What do you mean by that?" Harris didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch, the kind of silence that grew heavier with each passing second. Then, finally, he spoke softly. "You'll understand soon enough." Daniels clenched his jaw, frustration boiling inside him. He hated riddles, hated being left in the dark. Yet deep inside, a small part of him feared the answer. The night felt different now. The calm drizzle, the empty street, even the faint hum of the city in the distance, it all seemed to echo Harris's words. Choices. Consequences. Being watched. Daniels tried to shake it off, but the unease stayed with him, heavier than his badge. This stop was no longer just about control. It was becoming something much larger, something he didn't understand. And though he wouldn't admit it aloud, Officer Daniels felt the first shiver of doubt crawl down his spine. James stood frozen, her words echoing inside his chest. "Yes, James. They're yours." He had prepared himself for rejection, for denial, even for anger, but not for this. Not for the simple, undeniable truth that the children standing only a few feet away were his own. His heart swelled with emotions he couldn't control. Joy, regret, fear, and hope all collided at once, leaving him breathless. "Maya," he whispered, his throat tight. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes hardened again, though they shimmered with a quiet pain. She glanced at the twins, who were distracted by a small toy shop nearby, before answering. "Because you were never there, James. Not for me. And I couldn't risk you not being there for them." Her voice trembled, but her words carried strength. "I found out I was pregnant a few weeks after I left. At first, I thought about calling you. I even dialed your number one night. But then I saw your face on the news again, another interview, another celebration for your business. And I realized, nothing had changed. You were still married to your work. Still chasing deals. Still choosing the world over the people closest to you." James's chest ached. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the truth silenced him. Everything she said was real. He had been too busy, too blind, too consumed with ambition to notice what truly mattered. I was scared, Maya continued, her voice lower now. Scared that if I told you, you'd walk in and out of their lives the way you did mine. Scared that one day they'd wait for you at the window, asking when Daddy was coming home, and I'd have no answer. I couldn't let them feel that kind of pain. So I decided to raise them alone. James swallowed hard, guilt pressing down on him like a heavy stone. He imagined Maya struggling through doctor's appointments, carrying 2 children inside her, working late nights to keep them fed and clothed, all without his support. He imagined her hiding her tears so her children wouldn't see her weakness. The thought crushed him. Maya, his voice cracked. I never stopped thinking about you. Not once. I buried myself in work because it was the only way I knew how to forget. But I didn't forget. And if I had known about them, she cut him off sharply. Would you have stopped? Would you have put down your phone, cancelled your meetings, stayed home instead of flying across the world for business? Tell me honestly, James. Would you have changed? Her question stabbed at him because he didn't have an answer. Back then, the man he had been might not have changed. He might have continued down the same selfish path, and she knew it. I don't know, he admitted, his voice low. Maybe I wouldn't have. But I know who I am now. And I know that missing 5 years of their lives is the greatest mistake of mine. I can't get those years back, but I don't want to miss another moment. Maya's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly turned her face away so the children wouldn't see. It's not that simple. You can't just walk in now and expect to be their father. They don't know you. To them, you're a stranger. I'll change that, James said firmly. If you let me, I'll prove it to them every single day. I don't care how long it takes. I'll show up. Not as the man I used to be, but as the father they deserve. The twins came running back just then, holding small toys they had spotted. Mommy, can we have these? The girl asked eagerly. Maya smiled softly at them, brushing away the last of her tears before they noticed. Maybe later, she said gently. James watched the scene with an ache in his heart. That could have been him buying them toys, kneeling down to tie their shoes, carrying them when they were tired. Instead, he had missed it all. When the children ran a few steps ahead, Maya turned back to him. I didn't tell you because I didn't trust you, James. And part of me still doesn't. You hurt me once, and I promised myself I'd never let you hurt them. James nodded slowly, understanding. Then give me a chance to earn your trust again, he said. Not for us, for them. They deserve to know who I am. And they deserve to have me in their lives, if you'll let me. Maya studied him carefully, searching for signs of weakness or insincerity. All she saw was a man stripped of pride, standing before her with nothing but raw regret and hope. Finally, she sighed. I don't know if I can forgive you, James. But I won't deny the truth anymore. They are yours. If you really want to be part of their lives, prove it. Not in words, but in actions. James nodded, his chest heavy but his resolve strong. I will, he promised. The boarding call for his flight echoed again, but James didn't move. He knew he wasn't going anywhere. His future was not on that plane. It was standing right in front of him, in the form of 2 children with curious eyes and a woman who had once loved him more than anything. For the first time in years, James Donovan understood what true success meant. It wasn't the skyscrapers or the headlines. It was this moment, this chance to reclaim the family he never knew he had. And he silently vowed he would not waste it. The airport around them buzzed with noise, rolling suitcases, announcements over the loudspeakers, and the chatter of travelers rushing to their gates. But for James, it all faded into the background. His focus was only on Maya and the twins, who were now sitting on a bench with their little toys in hand. His heart raced as he approached them again, unsure of what to say. He had just learned the greatest truth of his life, and now every step he took felt heavier. "Can I sit?" James asked softly, looking at Maya. She hesitated, then gave a small nod. James sat down carefully, leaving a respectful space between them. He glanced at the twins. The boy was lining up his toy cars on the bench, while the girl hummed quietly to herself, holding a doll. Their innocence pulled at his heart. "What are their names?" James asked, his voice gentle. Maya looked at him for a long moment before replying. "This is Aiden," she said, pointing to the boy. "And this is Amara." James repeated the names quietly, almost reverently, as if he were afraid they would disappear if he spoke too loudly. "Aiden. Amara. His children." Aiden looked up curiously. "Mommy, who is this man?" The question pierced through James like a blade. He waited, holding his breath, watching Maya carefully. She placed a hand on her son's shoulder. "He's someone Mommy used to know," she said softly. James felt the weight of those words. Not a father, not yet, just someone. It was fair, but it still hurt. "Hi, Aiden." "Hi, Amara," James said, forcing a small smile. "My name is James." Amara tilted her head. "Do you have toys too?" she asked innocently. James chuckled, a sound filled with both joy and sadness. "I used to, when I was your age. Cars and puzzles mostly. But now, I work so much that I don't get to play often." Aiden's eyes lit up. "I love cars. Look, I got 3 already." He pushed the toy toward James, waiting for his reaction. James leaned down, his eyes bright. "That's a great collection. When I was a boy, I had one just like this. But yours looks faster." The boy grinned proudly, and for a brief moment, James felt like a piece of the wall between them had cracked. Maya watched quietly, her expression unreadable. She had expected James to be awkward or distant, but the way he lowered himself to speak with the children showed something else, something real. Still, she wasn't ready to trust him. "You know," James continued carefully, "I'd like to spend some time with you both. Maybe take you out for ice cream or to the park, if that's okay with your mom." Aiden's eyes sparkled, but he quickly looked at Maya. "Can we, Mommy?" Maya sighed, feeling torn. "Not today," she said gently. "We just came here for a trip. But maybe another time." James nodded, accepting her caution. He didn't want to push too hard. "That's fair. I understand." For a while, the 4 of them sat in silence. James kept sneaking glances at the children, memorizing their little features, the way Amara tucked her hair behind her ear just like Maya used to, or how Aiden's smile was almost identical to his own. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Why now, James? Why are you so sure you can be a father after all these years?" He turned to her, his eyes heavy with sincerity. "Because I finally see what matters. All my life, I thought success was about numbers, buildings, and awards. But sitting here, I realize I was building the wrong empire. The real success is them. It's being the kind of man they can look up to, the kind of man who shows up. I can't erase the past, Maya, but I can fight for the future." Her lips trembled slightly at his words, but she quickly straightened, keeping her guard high. "Words are easy, James. Promises are easy. I need to see action. I need to know you won't run when it gets hard." "I won't," James said firmly. "I'll be here. Even if you hate me, even if it takes years for them to trust me, I'll stay." At that moment, Amara climbed onto Maya's lap. She looked at James with wide, innocent eyes. "You talk funny," she said with a giggle. Like you're nervous. James laughed softly. Maybe I am. Meeting two amazing kids can make a man nervous. The little girl's laughter was like music to his ears. He felt something stir deep inside him, something warm, something hopeful. But Maya remained cautious. She knew how easily James could charm people with his words. She had fallen for that charm once. Now she needed proof that he had truly changed. As the boarding call echoed once again, James looked at the flight schedule. His plane was ready to leave. But he didn't move. He turned back to Maya. "I'm not getting on that plane," he said quietly. Maya's eyes widened. "James, you can't just throw away your business trip." "I can," he interrupted softly. "Because nothing on that flight is more important than what's right here. I've missed too much already. I'm not missing more." Maya studied him, searching for cracks in his resolve. But all she saw was determination, the kind she had never seen in him before. Aiden tugged on James's sleeve suddenly. "If you stay, can you play cards with me?" James's throat tightened. He nodded, smiling through the lump in his throat. "I'd love to." It was a small request, but to James, it felt like the start of something bigger. For the first time, the wall between him and his children had a doorway. Maya exhaled slowly. She wasn't ready to hand him her trust, but she couldn't deny what she had just seen. For the first time, she wondered if James really had changed. As James leaned down to race the tiny toy cars with Aiden on the bench, Amara clapped her hands and laughed. For a moment, it looked like a family again. And though the road ahead was uncertain, James silently vowed he would walk it no matter how long it took to prove he belonged with them. The airport lights glowed warmly as evening settled in. Passengers hurried past with tired eyes and heavy bags, rushing to catch flights that would take them to new places. But for James, time seemed to move differently. He was no longer a man chasing schedules, meetings, or business trips. His focus was only on the three people in front of him: Maya, Aiden, and Amara. He sat on the floor beside Aiden, pushing a small toy car back and forth while Amara laughed at their race. The little girl clapped her hands when her brother's car won, and James laughed too, the sound rich with joy he hadn't felt in years. Maya watched them carefully. A part of her heart softened at the sight James, the man who once left her broken, now sitting cross-legged on an airport floor, fully present with their children. But another part of her remained guarded. She knew how much charm James carried, and she refused to let her heart or her children's hearts be broken again. Finally, she spoke. "James," she said, her voice calm but serious, "children are not a hobby you pick up when it's convenient. They need love every single day. They need someone they can count on. Are you really ready for that?" James looked up at her. His eyes were tired, but there was a fire in them, something different from the man she had once known. "Maya," he said slowly, "I don't want to just visit them. I don't want to be a weekend father. I want to be part of their lives every day, in every way. I'm ready for the responsibility." Her expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "You say that now. But you've missed years already. You missed their first words, their first steps, their birthdays. You weren't there when they cried at night. I carried that alone, James. Why should I trust you now?" The words struck James deeply. He lowered his head, guilt pressing against his chest. "You're right," he whispered. "I failed you. And I failed them too. But I can't change the past. I can only change what I do now. Let me prove it to you. Let me earn a place in their lives, even if it takes years. I'll wait as long as it takes." Aiden tugged on Maya's sleeve. "Mommy, can he come with us?" the boy asked innocently. Maya hesitated, her heart caught between fear and hope. She looked into James's eyes again. For once, she didn't see the man blinded by money and ambition. She saw a man stripped of pride, a man who wanted nothing more than to hold on to the family he had almost lost forever. "We're not going to make this easy for you," she said firmly. "If you want to be in their lives, you'll have to prove it. Actions, not words." James nodded quickly. "Anything. I'll do whatever it takes." Amara leaned against Maya's side, her small voice cutting into the heavy moment. "Mommy, I like him. He makes the car sound funny." She giggled, imitating the silly noises James had made during their toy race. Maya couldn't help but smile, even if just for a second. The twins had already opened a tiny door for him. The question was, could he walk through it without breaking everything again? The final boarding call for James's flight echoed through the terminal. The businessman in him knew he was supposed to be on that plane, but he didn't move. For the first time in years, his world wasn't about flights or deadlines, it was about being here, now, with them. "I'm not leaving," James said quietly. Maya raised an eyebrow. "You'll lose your business deal." "Then I lose it," James replied firmly. "I've spent too long gaining the world and losing what really matters. This time, I choose differently." Silence hung between them for a moment. Then Maya finally gave a small nod. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was something, a beginning. "All right," she said softly. "We'll see. You can join us for dinner tonight. But after that, we'll take it one step at a time. No promises until you prove yourself." James's heart leapt. "Dinner sounds perfect. Thank you, Maya. Truly." Aiden jumped up, his face glowing with excitement. "Can we have pizza?" he asked eagerly. Amara clapped her hands. "Yes, pizza. With cheese." James laughed, his eyes shining. "Pizza it is. The best one in town, I promise." The four of them walked together out of the terminal, the night air cool against their faces. For the first time in years, James felt light, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He wasn't forgiven yet, and the road ahead would not be easy, but he was finally walking in the right direction. As they reached the parking area, Aiden slipped his small hand into James's. The simple gesture nearly broke him. Tears burned in his eyes, but he blinked them away and squeezed his son's hand gently. Amara skipped ahead, laughing, while Maya walked beside them, silent but thoughtful. For James, this moment was more precious than any deal, any contract, or any award. It was the beginning of something new. He knew there would be challenges, late-night arguments, moments of doubt, the hard work of rebuilding trust, but he was ready. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing money or success. He was chasing love. And as he looked at Maya and the twins, he realized he had finally found what truly made a man rich. That night, as the city lights twinkled in the distance, James whispered a silent promise to himself: "I will not fail them again. This time, I will stay." And with that vow, the story of James, Maya, and their children began anew, one step, one meal, one moment at a time.